This is a very simple question. Does music sound better now? Does recorded music sound better now than it did, let's say, 20 years ago in 2000? Or let's say 50 years ago in 1970? Whatever time frame you want to use. Your favorite music, not just music in general, whether you're into rock or chamber music or opera, whatever it is. Does music sound, does your music sound better now? Contemporary recordings sound better than they did in 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 50 years ago, whatever your time frame. And I want you to comment below. Because the reason I ask this question is that every time I go to an Audio Engineering Society show, and I will link to that organization, it's basically a community of recording engineers, just sound engineers in general. And they have conventions in New York from time to time, and I've been going to those conventions since the 70s, when I did actually go to school to be a recording engineer. I didn't really want to be a recording engineer, I just wanted to learn about recording. So I've been, talking to engineers and having lots of conversations. And I had a great conversation, which I will link to below, with Bob Clearmountain, who's an incredible mix engineer, super nice guy, and it was a fantastic interview, one of the best I think I've ever done, and nobody really cared. But anyway, it's there for your enjoyment. But the point here today is what's going on with recorded music, because this whole community of engineers, whatever kind, mix engineers, mastering engineers, whatever you want to call it, they want to make great sounding recordings. That's what they do. That's what they're there for. That was their passion. That's how they got into it, right? Now, we could go into the whole loudness wars thing and blah, blah, blah. Let's just table that. Let's put that to the side for now and just talk about the idea that is recording getting better, because there's so much new technology or technology that didn't exist 20 years ago or 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, right? And what is the purpose of this technology? Is to make better sounding recordings, right? I mean, recording studios in the 60s and 70s were relatively primitive compared to, the digital workstations that people use now and stuff. So in terms of the technology, things are so much better than they ever were. But I would say that what's lost, though, the reason that people like me cling, I'm not sure, that's not the right word, but let's just go for that right now, cling to, I love the sound of blah, 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 from the 60s or 70s or 80s or something. Well, part of it is nostalgia, but part of it is that those recordings, the simplicity of those recordings, I feel makes the music more accessible. And as music recording became more complex, that there's more processing and overdubs and mixing and fine-tuning things and auto-tuning, et cetera, that it kind of made the connection between the musician and the listener a little less direct. It may have been cleaner, it may have had lower distortion, it may have done a lot of blah, blah, blah. But in terms of that connection between listener and musician is not as good as it once was. But I don't really blame the technology exactly. It's more like how the technology is used, Is it used to capture, it's really simple, is it used to capture a performance, someone singing and playing in a recording studio? Or is the technology used to create a performance that never actually existed? The singer never sang that well, sang as in tune as that. It's basically bits and pieces of a performance or performances that are sort of glued together in a mix and say, here it is, here's the new Diana Krall record or something, right? I'm not saying that that's how Diana Krall makes recordings, but maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. My point here is that I think that's a big part of the difference between then and now, that the technology isn't used, let's say, for good, for musical good. It's used for technical good, to make it technically better, more exacting. Rick Beato has a great channel, and it is all about the process of putting music into recordings and performing. I'll link to it below. I watch it all the time. He is fantastic. And he talked about quantizing beats, where you take a drummer's pattern and it may be a little fast or a little slow, and it just locks it in and makes it right on the money. But in the process of taking the human feel out of the actual drummer's sound, it becomes more like a drum machine, less like a person, more like a machine. That's not good, right? Okay. So, but for some reason, musicians, producers, record companies, and to some degree the public want that sound. That's why it's there. If it wasn't liked, if people didn't want it to sound like that, I think the industry would have gotten the message and said, okay, people don't like quantizing beats. So just using that as an example of making things like right on the money in terms of time, as opposed to having a loose feel. By the way, another plug, and none of these are commercials, obviously, I hope that's obvious, is this magazine, Tape Op. It's a great magazine. It's almost like an audiophile equivalent magazine for engineers, and it's very quirky. It's been around for a long time and has an amazing business model. You should check out their website, and I will link to it below. But you can subscribe to this print magazine for free, and it has all the good stuff that isn't necessarily on the website. But it's by engineers, for engineers, and getting a glimpse into that world is pretty damn cool. Because you'll meet the people, the engineers that are being interviewed on these pages, because that's a lot of what this magazine is, interviews with engineers and producers and musicians sometimes. And when you hear them speak in the interviews, you get the feeling, yeah, they want to make their recorded music great. Not just sound great in an audiophile sense, the music connection, that to be great. Obviously, some succeed and some don't, but that's why that is. I'm going to try to figure that out before I leave planet Earth. I do want to figure out why so much contemporary recorded music is lacking that life, that spark of human beings making music. Because in older recordings, it's obviously there. They didn't know how to take it out in those days, so they didn't even try. But as the technology evolved, that's sort of what happened. I've asked engineers about it, and I never get satisfying answers to those questions. Like, where did we go wrong? Other than the things I already know about capturing performances, and less it's about capturing the performance of a musician or a band playing, and it's more about assembling performances from bits and pieces. What do you think? My name's Steve Guttenberg. This is the Audiophiliac Daily Show. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that. I really, really do. I'm working hard to keep putting out content, that some of which is good or great, whatever. And if you dig it, please subscribe. And when you do, hit the notification bell. If you don't want to commit, I understand. But if you're here and you dig it, give me a thumbs up. If you think it's not so hot, give me a thumbs down. I can handle that. You can follow me on Twitter at AudiophiliacMan. You can follow me on Instagram at steve.guttenberg. I take a lot of pictures of audio and other stuff. Best of all, you can check me out on Patreon. That's the hot ticket. At patreon.com/audiophiliac. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.